Hello, I'm Ed Parcaut, the host of Helping the Brave, and let's bring in our guest today, which is Rich Ingram. Rich, thanks for coming on the show today. Really appreciate you being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ed. I appreciate it.
No problem. We were talking before we went live. You're in Austin. I'm in California, and complaining about the weather, but what can you do?
Yeah, that's right. Complaints. That's all it is.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of it's. I'd much rather be back down in San Diego working out because it's always nice down there.
Oh, that's heaven down there. That's true, man. Oh God. But you know what though? When you're training in high heat and humidity, your body does similar things as what it does to people that are at altitude or elevation. Over 8,000 feet, your body produces more red blood cells. So we're effectively, when we're training this way, I mean, even though we're slogging along, when we go to those perfect conditions, we're all the more better for it.
Yeah. Well, that's when I used to do all my triathlons. I would definitely go out in the heat of the day so that way when I'm running one of them and it's hot, it's not bothering me and everybody else is laying around dying because it's so hot.
I
Uh,
know. Yeah, that's right.
yeah. And I'd always go way longer than I should go on all my trainings, and just because I wanted to make sure that I could do more. Plus, I was
That's
a big,
right.
yeah, I was a Clydesdale. So,
Oh, nice. Yeah.
yeah.
My buddy's a Clydesdale, and oh my gosh, man, some of those Clydesdales, they surprise you. I mean, they throw the hammer down, right? Especially on the
The
bikes.
bike and swimming get out of our way.
Yeah.
That's how it works, man. Running, unless there's a C on the calf, I don't even care.
I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, what service were you in, Rich?
I was in the army. Got out of the army.
What'd you do in the army?
So, well, so I retired twice. I was enlisted in the National Guard. So in the state of Georgia, we had simultaneous membership program, and so that was my first deployment. And when I had my injury, and I was retired, and then I came back in as an engineer officer in active duty army and did 3 more tours. So I retired a second time in
Wow.
2013. Yeah.
Yeah, my son's in the army. He's an airborne medic. I guess now he's only a medic. He gave that up. He got after he hit those last tree. He's like, I'm done.
Where was he at? Fort Bragg?
He was up in Alaska for his first
Okay.
4 years, and then he just got stationed in Washington State
Yeah,
outside of Yelm. What is
I
that,
was
Joint
in
Base McClure? Yeah.
I don't know, but I know in the 20th Engineer Brigade at Fort Bragg's 27th Engineer Battalion, they have a company and all they do is jump into trees for
Oh,
clearing
really?
airfield. So yeah, I mean they have this like face masks, these big like astronaut looking suits, and they jump with chainsaws and they're trying to hit the trees. It's insane.
Well,
Yeah, it's wild.
yeah, he luckily they have helmets, and he hit with a helmet, and he was like, they got all of them got blown into the trees, and it wasn't planned, of course.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's. I remember when I was in the Navy, I'd take care of a lot of Marines who would jump, and then the cords would cut their biceps or all the other fun stuff.
Happened to my buddy. Yeah, I mean, he said when he jumped, it was the winter time. And he said he just felt pain in his arm. And, of course, his NCOs were like, get up, Dalton, let's go. And when he finally got on the bus and so his bicep was just hanging off, he got caught, whatever, the
In
slack
the
line.
line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, little things we run into. Why did you
Yeah,
pick the
right.
army? Yeah, why did you pick the army?
You know, um, so one, to be honest with you, the Air Force wouldn't let me in when when I
No, you
first
can
shot.
tell it. Don't lie to me. Just tell me the truth. I'm
Yeah,
just kidding.
yeah, yeah. And so when initially I loved the army because I went to the University of North Georgia. And so that's one of 6 senior military colleges. This is the biggest Army ROTC program in the country, but that's all we had was Army. So that's really where I went. But the story there is when I was growing up, I came from a pretty affluent family. My parents met at medical school. My dad was never around when I was growing up. I mean, he was gone in the morning when I woke up, gone when I went to bed at night. He didn't come to game. He worked 7 days a week, and I was just like this. I had the energy of a supernova with no direction. As I got older into my teens, I started to loathe my dad because he wasn't doing the things with me that I saw other kids' dads, like my friends out hunting, fishing, going to games, and all that stuff. And I did what I call chasing air. I was trying to do what I thought would make me popular or whatever. And I didn't have access to all these things. Man, I was a drinker and a fighter. It's part. And so fortunately, I guess in the state of Georgia, it's really easy to get a scholarship because I did. And I got into North Georgia and I got a 1.7 GPA my first semester. And I quit. And I called my folks up and was like, hey, I'm coming home. My dad was like, no, you're not. Find somewhere else to live. I found myself homeless, camping out in a creek in the North Georgia mountains in December and January. And I finally found a job making $22,000 a year, working 6 days a week, 12-hour days. And even I knew that was nothing. But when I got sick of brushing my teeth in the creek, I finally was like, man, look, this is not how the direction I want to go. So I went to the National Guard recruiter and I signed up. And I told my dad, called my dad up. I'm like, hey, I want to be an officer. I'm going to do the program. I go to infantry base training in March. He said, you can come home under conditions. And so for 6 weeks, he made me every single day. I'd have to write out. He said, you have to work out and run every day, read at least one book and do a book report per week. No drinking, no television. And there's a couple other small things. And he would make me write down my plan and he would initial off every day and he would grade my book reports. It was insane. And it was tough for the first couple of weeks. But after that, what I realized about my dad was he was an outlier, but to become successful, I had to be an outlier. And there is no better preparation that I could have had than what he did. I mean, I was literally working out and running every single day. Now I know that's not that effective and you get burned out, but I maybe do it and I have a choice. And but once I got in the military, I found purpose. I found, ambition, a goal, and a drive. And I put all that energy that I had, I put into that. I found my purpose, my identity in the military. And so that's how I ended up going into the Army. It was really because University in North Georgia.
Wow. It probably felt really good with what your dad giving you some attention.
Yeah,
Because
it
don't
re-
get me wrong, my dad was a mean son of a bitch, and he passed when I was 12. But you miss even not having that dad around. You still miss it. So
yeah, absolutely. And even though I loathed my father growing up, I think after my initial time in the military, I started to realize. I mean, now he's one of my heroes. Of course, there's some things that he could have done differently, but whatever. Um, he taught me how to be successful on the journey, right? And that's to freaking work hard.
I mean, it's not easy being parents. There's
No, it's not.
it's
My
not.
my parents used to always say, like, "Oh, there's not a book." I mean, now there are
There's
probably a lot of
books,
them.
but yeah,
You
but
can't
they're
treat every
not
child the
like
same.
yeah. I mean, because you do the best you can, and then your kids learn, and then they're supposed to do the best, even better than you did. So
Yeah, and again, one of the things, and just a little about my father. Instead of I remember a baseball bat when I was 7, he bought me the Book of Virtues, by William J. Bennett. Just to tell you a little, which is a great book, by the way. Just a little off when you're 7, but the value stuck, right? The things that he taught me and how I was reared stuck. It's just they didn't really start to come through until after I left the house. But I'm glad that I learned those things 'cause they're still with me today.
usually we do not appreciate our parents until we're older, or your kids do not appreciate you until they're older.
Yeah,
Which,
and it's sad, but it
but
is
that's
what
okay. That's how that works.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think the problem we run into is people who want to be friends with their kids instead of the parent.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, and again, I mean, because then you just, I mean, it's kind of like the when you have a leader in the military and all he wants to do is appease everyone.
doesn't
you're
work.
not going to respect them. Yeah, so
It's like owning a business as a boss. It's lonely because you're not supposed to have friends at your company. They're not. They're your employees. Yes, you can treat them nice, but I'm just saying it's not the same, and people don't understand that until they become an owner.
right, right. No, you're absolutely right. It always reminds me of Michael Scott on The Office is a pretty good example of that.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So when so you said you retired out the first time because of medical. Is that what I heard?
That's right. Yeah. So, in 2005, the Georgia National Guard got orders to deploy to Iraq, and so, I got pulled out of school and started training for that whole deal, and so we shipped out. My battalion and platoon, we were just southwest of Baghdad, so we're in the triangle of death that it was called back then, and so that's Yusufia, Ludovica, and Mahmudia, and and man, I loved it. I mean, if anything, that deployment just emboldened my love for the military. I mean, I volunteered for every mission, and it was a thrill, right? Because I was Cowboy West back in 2005. There are no round counts. You fire your gun at anything you wanted to. And but about 3 months in, I'm on a 4-vehicle patrol. We were around Yusufia, and I was the rear gunner. And back then, that's before you had the MRAPs. We were just in Humvees, and so as a gunner, half your body's exposed, and I'm on the 50, and and dude, I'm ready for a fight, and my vehicle struck an IED, and obviously the fight came to me differently than I'd imagined. And I just remember the vehicle getting tossed in the air and trying to, drop down, grab the radio mount like they tell you, and we just started rolling. And I just remember telling myself, "Lights out, say a prayer." And when I landed, I mean, I couldn't believe I was alive. It was like I was in a different world. But when I looked up, I saw my driver unconscious in the passenger seat of the Humvee. And when I went to move towards him, that's when I felt achiness in my arm because at that point it didn't really hurt. And I just remember taking my right hand and trying to feel for the brake, and I just missed completely, hitting nothing. And when I looked down, what's left of my BDUs or ACUs, I think we had then, was just covered in blood, and my forearm was lying on the ground, connected by a piece of flesh no bigger than your pinky finger. And so I'm back in this "I'm gonna die" mode, and I was just like, "Man, I'm not fucking dying here." So I just picked up my arm and ran with it. I started kicking the Humvee door, and driver's name Spottish Wood, and just flawless action. I mean, these battle drills we rehearsed so many times. Puts a tourniquet on, we get an IV started, and wait for the chopper to come. And I'll tell you, one of my best friends came over, and he kept telling me like, "Don't close your eyes, don't close your eyes." I mean, it's like July in Iraq. It's 120 something degrees. I'm on my back staring at the sun. I was like, "Dude, I'm closing my fucking eyes." And he's like, "All right, just hold my hand." And so when they took the stretcher to put me on the chopper, when he let go of my hand, he's like, "You'll be all right, man. I'll see you soon." And he was killed a month later. Um, and and those were violent. It was a violent time in Iraq back then. But I arrived in Walter Reed 2 days later, so I stabilized well, and started my first rehabilitative journey. But there was no you're staying in back then. It was just like, all right, let's start your retirement process. And so I went with it at the time.
So what they do it differently now?
I don't know how I have no idea how they do it, but,
Oh, no, you just said it back then, they just said shit.
well, it's because so, when you lose an arm, they just assume you're getting out of the military. There's
Right.
no now so many people have gone either stayed in or, me, I was for they retired me, right? I mean, they handed me a check and said, "Thank you for your service." But while I was at Walter Reed, I actually that's when I started doing triathlon. Somebody asked me to be on their triathlon team. And I mean, I kind of laughed at them because I didn't even know what that was. I just knew tri was three because I took Latin in fourth grade. But when I told Dave yes, that completely changed my mindset on everything because I wasn't a good swimmer. The last time I swam was in middle school competitively, and I was horrible. I quit that. Cycling, I mean, cycled to my buddy's house when I was 12 years old. So all of these things that I was
I'm sorry,
doing,
I'm laughing at you because I'm complete opposite. I hate running. Give me the bike and the
Oh,
swim. I'm great at that, man. Put a wetsuit on me, and I'm like a whale, man. I can fly because I
oh,
got
now
the.
look, I got smart. I got smart. I would pick these races like the New York City Triathlon. It's in a river with a fairly fast current. It's colder, so you get to wear a 5 millimeter wetsuit. So man, just pick those where you can just float and coast. And so I became a good cyclist. But when I first got in the pool, after I lost my arm and started practicing, the only lane that I could get in was like where they took one rope out, so it was a bigger section, and all the like really old people were doing their pool noodle exercises, and I was so embarrassed because had I two arms when I was asked to be on trial, I wouldn't have done it because I'd have known I would fail over and over again. So I was in this fixed mindset of where I knew what I was good at and I was going to stick to it. I didn't want anyone in my mind to see me knocked off a pedestal. And so, but the difference was I was reinventing myself. And it's similar even when you don't have an injury and you're getting out of the military. I mean, dude, you just been in fifth gear for how many years? Because you're either training for war or you're at war. I mean,
Right.
that is a thrill. And now you're going down to first gear. I mean, dude, you got to figure some stuff out. And so,
Got to
for
find your
me,
purpose. Is what
you
you're
do.
saying. Yeah.
You have to repurpose yourself. And that purpose really, that's the true motivator, right? And the only thing that I identified with was soldiering. That was it. I didn't have a dog. I didn't have anything. I had the military. And so you have to be careful because purpose and identity are intertwined. And so, one thing that I always tell everyone is that you have to peel back the onion and you have to envision yourself getting hit by a Mack truck driving to the gas station later today and becoming paralyzed. Is your purpose still your purpose after you're paralyzed? I cannot say my purpose is an endurance athlete because I'm one Mack truck away from not being an endurance athlete or one jacked up knee away from not being a runner or whatever it is. So you have to peel the onion back and you have to find out what are you good at? What to your core do you love and is inspiring to you? And then chase it. That doesn't mean because the difference is, man, when you get in that civilian world, what are you? You're showing up the same, doing the same thing. It's just first gear. So it's like, man, when's the war, right? So I call it challenge immersion, and so that's one of the reasons why I'm an endurance athlete is because I immerse myself in, like I have a race in the Leadville 100 in August, and so every single day I'm doing something to get me to that level, and then I already know what the next race is going to be and what the next one is, and so that's my challenge immersive process to maintain my emotional stability and stay in that fifth gear without freaking all the civilians out, you know. But going back to the mindset thing, I was horrible in the pool, but the difference was I just kept at it. I showed up every day and allowed myself to fail and was just open to any feedback or criticism. That the bike, everybody waited on me at the stop sign. Next thing I knew, man, I was waiting on everyone. I was happy to do it, but I kept showing up. And that's part of the process is knowing that all these pains and these failures is part of the journey. When we start getting anxious or depressive, and like, man, God, what am I doing? Am I cut out for this? Am I on the right path? Dude, there's not one clinically sane person that hasn't thought that or doesn't think that. It's part of the process. You got to keep going. And that's one of the things that I learned throughout that process of being in triathlon. And it really just catapulted my rehabilitative journey. And that's how I ended up going back in as an officer. A state I was doing an internship with the state senator in Georgia, and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "Well, I'm racing against able-bodied people competitively. Why can't I go back in the military?" I mean, they say it's because I'm missing a limb, but I mean, I can do push-ups, I can do pull-ups, I can do all that stuff. And so next thing I know, I'm sitting in front of some general that was on President Bush at the time staff. And they said, "Look, resubmit your packet. If you can meet the standard, we're gonna make this happen." And that's what we did. We made it happen.
Well, that's like the gentleman who retired a couple years ago that was in that movie Battleship. Did you ever see that movie Battleship?
Uh-uh. Uh-uh.
I can't think. He's a current. He was a colonel. He had bilateral amputee legs, and he retired.
I'm gonna look him up.
I
One
can't
of
think of
my
his name, but I remember seeing it a couple years ago. That he just retired. I was like, I didn't think he was still in, but in the movie he's at like a Walter Reed, but it's in
Mhm.
Hawaii. I don't know what that one's called, but he was getting, I don't even know if they have it there, but it just sounded good for the movie. But and he was walking around with his legs, and so and go ahead.
Yeah, no, and so and one of my good buddies, so and Dave Roselle, same guy that asked me to be on his triathlon team. I know he was the first amputee to return in the current wars in commanded units. So he lost his leg in an IED attack. And I mean, soft skin, same Humvee putting sandbags in the floorboard, right? And then he went back and took command over in Iraq. I think he lost his leg in 2003, maybe went back like in 2004. And I think he just got out a couple years ago. So,
Gregory D. Gadsden.
Gregory
He
Gadsden.
Yeah, he was a retired colonel, and I think he just retired like last year. So
Well, and I think the military recognizes that you know you can still do these things, right? So the difference with me was I was enlisted and then became an officer, and that hadn't happened before. The crazy thing about all of that was and it wasn't easy when I went back to RTC. Obviously there were several times where I said, hey, look, Rich, we don't think this is going to happen, we want you to stay in the program, but blah blah. I just stuck with it. And well, first, I get a phone call about 2 weeks before we're about to commission from a buddy. He's like, dude, why didn't you tell me you were doing this? I'm aide de camp to the general that has to sign the final waiver for you to commission. And I get chills every time I say this. That was Dave Roselle, the same guy that asked me to be on his triathlon team, was now aide de camp to this general. And I was just like, wow, things kind of came together. But I didn't, his general didn't get the paperwork over to us until the Friday before I commissioned on the Saturday. My sergeant major called me. He was like, hey, we finally got the paperwork. Good to go. I was like, all right, thanks, sergeant major, because all my family's here and I haven't told them that I wasn't commissioned. Um, so, it worked out.
all right, so how did you get into doing the endurance? Because that's
Um,
not easy.
no, I
Well,
think it was
actually,
on.
let me back up with it. Swimming for a triathlon. Do you how that must be much harder with one arm, full arm, and part of it. Did you
It
use that?
sucks. No, I didn't use anything. They tried to, but it would just get in the way or fall off. Like they made this little paddle you could put on your arm. But then if you use any kind of device, you can't compete able-bodied. And so I just figured I'd slug it out. But yeah, that was my worst um leg for sure, was the swim. Cycling, I was really strong at. I had some scares where like my arm would fly, like doing Xterra, for example. Mountain biking, I mean, God, it's not a race if my arm doesn't fly off and I go over the handlebars. But yeah, it
I'm
was
sorry, I
brutal.
had to laugh, man.
No,
It's the only way we deal with shit in the military.
I know. I did this one in Richmond and this Xterra, and I don't know how, but I'd somehow fallen off like the side of these. I mean, it was only like a 12-foot drop, so I don't want to say cliff, but I mean, it still would have fucked me up. And I'm like hanging on, and I had like the frame of the bike like hanging off my leg, and people were just going by me, and and I didn't want to ask for help. I was at that point in my life like, oh fuck, I got this, and I figured my way out of it. But yeah, sometimes it would be brutal. But on road, I did do a triathlon in San Francisco. It was just a relay, and I was a cyclist, and I just had my brake cables restrung, and I get my swimmer comes in, and I take off out of transition. Right when I'm coming out of transition, my brake cable snapped
Wow.
before I even started the race. And the volunteer looks at me like, "What are you gonna do?" I was like, "Fuck it, I didn't come out here to watch." And so I I did this race in San Francisco. I don't remember how many miles it was with no brakes, but I will say this. I learned more about my abilities with no brakes than I ever would have. Like it put me in a different bracket because of just being, knowing to turn at high speeds and all that. So it's can break. Um, but yeah, the swim sucked. To be
Yeah,
sure.
I did a nation the nation's triathlon a few years ago, and we were coming around. We were flying. I mean, I never. We did. It was only a Olympic distance at that time I was doing, and I mean, it was 25 miles, and we were doing it in less than so fast. I mean, it was the fastest we've ever done that. And when they're coming and they're telling us to slow down, slow down. There's a bump. Well, they weren't kidding. It was like someone had dropped a couch and covered it with asphalt with this bump where you're coming down underneath.
Sounds
There
like
was
New Orleans.
water bottles everywhere from everybody who had crashed
Oh
flying
yeah.
through there, and yeah, I hit it so hard I thought I destroyed my rims. So,
Well, and that's one that I don't like. I've kind of gotten away from that, so I'm just running now, and I like cycling. Don't get me wrong, but racing like that, like I watch the criteriums, I'm just like, because I'm unstable. Like
yeah.
I don't trust myself if I'm riding close to other people. Like I just gotta admit, like, hey man, I don't feel comfortable doing this. I'm on, which I feel bad. Like I'll either ride in the front or I'll just go straight to the back because I just don't. Otherwise, I might knock you over. Um, but we
Oh,
suffer
wow.
together. Yeah,
Yeah.
fuck off.
Yeah, so
Um,
all right, so how did you get into endurance?
so I had always been a runner, and I had done a marathon when I was on leave for Iraq in my second deployment, and I ran it. It was my first one. I ran it in 3 hours. I was like, man, I'm not that bad. And like I said, I mean, I was an 11-minute 2 mile guy, but I mean that's a lot different than marathon. um so once I got back to Fort Bragg, I just started like avid fly fisherman. I'll just throw my pack on my back, run for a couple hours, go fishing, run for a couple hours back. And but what really got me into it was probably about I don't know, several 5 years ago. My daughter called it because after I got out of the military, I mean, I was my emotional state was just undulating, right? Like I didn't, just trying to reinvent myself again. And my daughter called the couch my bed. And because I'd stay up late, get the last dip in, then I just fall asleep on the couch. And I was like, you know what, man, fuck this. This is not how I want my kids being raised. Not the kind of father I want to be. So I started running again. I torn my hamstring and had some ankle surgery, and that's kind of why I wasn't keeping up with it. But I just decided to run through it, and I did, and it got better. And next thing you know, I was like, man, I'm just gonna sign up for a 50K and see what happens. Didn't do poorly, and I was like, all right, off to the races. But one thing I noticed is that my emotional threshold just kept getting bigger and bigger. Little things bothered me less. The depressive states happen less. Bouts of anxiety still hit, but now I have a process for them. I've figured out how I can turn them into opportunities for growth. And it's so time consuming, right? I mean, like we were talking about, I had a 5 hour run Sunday. I have another 5 hour run on Thursday. So I'll probably end up running. I don't whatever the amount of mileage or duration is, but it's so time consuming. And then you have to make sure you're sleeping right, eating right, so you can recover, do it well the next day. Well, now I only have so much time in a day for work, for my family. So I'm intentional with everything that I do. All the while, I'm maintaining it to, in my mind, that fifth gear, and I'm showing up positively for the people that I care about and clients, etc. And so that's why I love it. I mean, I can't get enough of it.
Wow.
And
See, and
and
to me, that just sounds painful.
it
Yeah.
is, but
Just
it's
because
a
that's not I could ride forever. I love riding. That's the difference. So, I mean, I can cycle for hours. I'm talking 8, 9. I could forever. Just I enjoyed it so much. Yeah.
it is fun. I think one thing that really scared me is that when I had one arm, I got a motorcycle. And so I had a Harley Street Bob, and I had it, all the gears put on the right side and everything. And I remember the first time I got on it at the shop after they had done all these things. I'd never ridden a motorcycle before. And there's like I'm sitting perpendicular to the rest of like 15 motorcycles, right? And I get on this thing and I'm like trying to figure out how to do it. And it just, I just see it shooting at all these motorcycles. So I had to lay it down. So I fucked it up like the first day I got on it. But I had a near miss on it. And I don't know, kind of ever since then, I've been scared to go on a bike. Like I'm just I don't know. I'm nervous that I'm gonna fuck something up. So, um, but anyways, I do enjoy it.
My problem with the bike is, especially since the pandemic, people just don't care. They drive horribly. They don't stop. They don't look for you. They don't care. It was bad enough before. It's even worse now. And so it's just so dangerous
You
these
know, that
days.
that is one thing that Austin does really well. I mean, you get out and I mean they basically have a car lane for cyclists. And a lot of the people what I found are respectful. That Louisiana, they don't give a fuck, dude. I mean, they will run your ass over. So completely different culture.
I've had Gatorade bottles hit me in the head on, in some of the country, the back roads. Yeah, I was like, you don't. And the sad part is, I almost caught that guy. It's like,
Oh
I'll
wow,
get you.
yeah.
Yeah, don't you got to, I can get this bike moving. So you might want to get moving. And yeah, so
That's
it's just
awesome.
people being jerks. You know what I mean? And we just had somebody recently die, and out there, and it's just dangerous. We do have lanes for them, but around town, but it's just not. I don't want to ride on that lane. I want to be able to go, you know 27, 30 miles an
Right,
hour
right,
on my
right.
bike, and I can't do that on those lanes because they want you to keep it under a certain control. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
Oh
hear you.
well. All right. So I heard you say work in there. You work. What do you do?
I'm a speaker,
Okay.
so speak on resilience and in a framework for establishing resilience. I call it raw
I don't know if
resilience.
you watched any of my stuff, but we just put on a fire walk for veterans in April here in Modesto, California. It was a 2-day event. Have you been interviewed or talked to David Albin at all on through
Mm-mm.
Podmatch? All right. So
Uh,
he was an alcoholic who he was in the military, but then he was an alcoholic. He got cleaned and he went to a Tony Robbins event and became eventually Tony Robbins' chief, the guy that ran the firewalks. And so I did an interview with him, and he was asked if he had ever put a firewalk on for veterans, and so he wanted to do it. They tried to do it back in the East Coast, but they couldn't get it together. I'm doing it, and we did it, and so it was a 2-day event. Each day was separate. You'd come either Friday or so. It was really a Saturday event, but we actually had Friday for my Rotary and other people to come and figure out what we are going to do for veterans the next day. But it ended up coming, you could come either day now, but we're doing it again next May 3rd of 25. Is called Operation Firewalk. You can go to operationfirewalk.com. But I'm looking for speakers this year, and I want veteran speakers to talk on things. We had Dave Sanborn. Yeah. He was the guy that was the last person off the plane that went in the Hudson, and he helped everybody. He
yeah,
talked
yeah,
about
yeah.
his story. He was really good, and Dave Album was there to talk about the firewalk and stuff. Well, I want to do a 1-day event, 4 hours, and have multiple keynote speakers of veterans talking about what they've been through and how they got through it, because that's what it's about. It's about reigniting your passion, that for veterans.
No, absolutely. I would love that. And I tell you, one of the best things too is being around other veterans. Because that's another reason why I guess I love ultra marathon is they're like-minded people like us, whether they're civilians or veterans. Like they know how to work hard. They know what it's like to suffer, and for the most part, they're they're not shammers, right? Like we share commonalities, and when you're on these really long runs and races, you you get to know people well, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know, there's something about the camaraderie that's very similar to the military, but you can never have the same connection with anyone that you can is when someone's like, oh yeah, I was in what it doesn't matter if they're Marine Corps or Navy, like you're automatically connected to that person. Anyways,
I
get
see
off.
you picked on the Navy and the Marine Corps. You didn't pick on the Army or the Air Force. I saw that, so that's okay.
Well, I don't Air Force, man. I don't.
Hey, well, Air Force was a division of the Army, so
That's right. My grandfather was actually in the Army Air Corps, and then when they split off, he was
that was during so Vietnam was that's why you hear so many people in the Air Force in Vietnam is because they were building that brand. Everybody, my dad was in it, my uncle was in it. That was why there's so many people in the Air Force during the Vietnam.
oh, that makes sense. I think my grandfather's retired before Vietnam. He
Yeah.
was in World War II.
No, but you're right. That was Army, and then they split it off to the Air Force, and
Yeah.
that's just like the Navy. Then they had the Marines, and they split that off as a division. So and a lot of Marines don't like the fact that we tell them you're a Department of Navy.
Whatever.
Yeah, well, that's how
Um,
it is. I was a
what
corpsman in
you
the
were a corn?
Navy,
Yeah, I
and
was about to say.
I worked with the Marines. I was stationed at Camp Pendleton my whole time, and that's all I did. So
When did you get out?
long freaking time ago, early '90s. So
Okay, yeah. I've met some great corpsmen. A matter of fact, I don't think I've met a bad one, and I know there's bad eggs in every basket, but I was at Walter Reed with the corpsman who lost his arm, and just a freaking stellar guy. Matter of fact, I think he's on the board or does he has some kind of leadership capacity with Wounded Warrior Project. Um, but anyways, just a killer dude.
yeah. Well, if you ever connect, you can connect helping the brave with any of these people. I'd appreciate it. We're always looking for
Absolutely.
additional people to talk about their story and help veterans understand. This we're not heroes. We're brave, right? We run towards danger. We don't think we're heroes. So
Well, and I mean, I guess I always kind of looked at thought of myself kind of as a loner. That I could do things on my own. Like I maybe didn't fit in like everyone else. And the older I get, the more I realize that that's that's so not true, right? I don't know if I'm
yeah,
getting softer or just getting raw, right? I mean, the more you can talk about uh, what's going on with you with people that are like you, good man. Life, I mean, it's just like a weight off your shoulders. It's
oh,
crazy.
definitely. I was talking to I was talking to a guy, and he's like, he started his podcast, and come to find out, it was therapy for him. For the every time he talked to somebody, he could understand what people are going through. I wanted to give back because I was one of the lucky ones who didn't actually see war like everybody else did, but I missed it by 2 days, and I would have went back. And I know so many people I know personally when that was in that from the first one, and how messed up they are from that first one. So, and I feel sorry for the National Guard who got deployed like so many freaking times during this last one.
Oh yeah. My buddy he's on his third deployment. He's in the Georgia National Guard. He's on his third deployment, and he did not deploy with me on the one I went on in 2005. So a lot of these guys, I mean, Rome's fell through them in the R4 Gen cycle, and so uh yeah. But a lot of the guys that I know, National Guard now, when I first came in, people made fun of you if you're in the National Guard because all they did was sit around on the weekends, drink beer, and grill out. But when they got started deploying, I mean, this is a completely different story. And there's some freaking stellar dudes in the guard. And my hat's off to them because you have to reintegrate every time you come back into a completely different society. You're yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, very tough. Rich, thanks so much for coming on the show. How do people find you if they want to reach out to you at all?
So richingram.com is one of the best places. I'm on Instagram at Rich T. Ingram, trying to get that up and running. And I will say, Ed, so I'm running the Leadville 100. Um, One of the nonprofits that I'm raising money for is called Warriors and Quiet Waters. If you go to my website, richingham.com, you'll see a banner at the top. And matter of fact, if you're listening, please go and sign up and register to get in the program. What these guys do is they'll bring you out they have different locations all over the US, but their home base is in Bozeman, Montana. Teach you how to fly fish. They have elk hunts that they do a 6 month, I think it's a 6 month physical fitness program, this whole thing. And they have an alumni community as well. And so this is just, it couldn't align with my values for reintegration, and how the outdoors and physical fitness is really just a great process for us to reintegrate. But check them out, and please, if you can, donate whatever you can, $2, $5, $100, and help these guys out.
All right, you heard it. Reach out to do that again. What was the name of that charity?
So that's Warriors and Quiet Waters. And
Was
if you
it
go
is
to,
it warriorsandquietwaters.com? Got
yes,
it.
yeah, Warriors and
I'll put in the
Quiet.
show notes for everybody so that it'll be there.
Yeah, there you go.
Rich, it was really nice talking to you. I really and getting to know you. I appreciate you coming on, helping the brave.
Yeah. Oh man, it's been a great conversation, Ed. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure.